Hey Nicholas, I'm just going to go through what I would do to do something like a carving style, engraving or plaque. So I've got an image here of my own fur baby that I'm going to use for this example. And let's say I wanted to make like a little 4x4 carving plate of this. I would open up Mastercam, fire up art, and I'm going to go over to From Image here, and I'll navigate out to the image. And you have a couple options as you go through this conversion, but I find it's best to really do this editing of the image externally to Mastercam and basically have it ready to go when you bring it in. It makes it a little simpler, and with external editing, you're doing things to a higher quality and a little more control than you can do in this very simple interface. But so I'll click OK here. And this is the screen where all the magic happens, really. So I have this height range here. And what this height range is doing is basically setting a depth for the carving. So if I enter a 1/4 inch, that means that the colors in my image are basically being converted to Z depths, and the peak to valley total distance will be a 1/4 inch. So my lowest point will be at 0 and my highest point will be at 0.25 essentially. So here I'll set it to an 1/8 inch for the image I'm doing. Here we can control our width and height, and we maintain aspect ratio. So if I had a 4x4 plate, I might want to say this is 3.75 or so, and I hit tab and it auto scales the height. So I'm all set here. I'll green check to start bringing this in. And this is kind of what I get. You can see my dog had quite a lot of detail in the fur color, so you get a lot of peaks and valleys here. Um, and the total height here is in a 1/8 inch range that I defined. So how do I start working with this surface to actually machine it? Well, you can work in art to machine this. They do have this like a surface toolpath here. What I like to do is actually kick this out to an STL and then bring it back in so that I can work with it with regular Mastercam 3D toolpaths now. So here I'll go to Export Base, and I'll just save it as an STL. And I'll say this is Odin.stl. And you've got some basically some STL um, tolerancing options here. I'll just leave it at current. I'll write the STL file. This is going to take just a second. This is a pretty detailed file. And with that done, I'll actually start a new file just to show this a little easier. And I will merge in my STL. And I'll green check. So there we go. I'll actually change some of the mesh display options here. But basically now we have this as a surface that we can throw a toolpath on. So I can go mill default and then fire up a regular old raster and go out and select this STL and path against it. So I'll just create a little ball end mill to show this here. And I'll say OK. And this might take a minute to calculate because, again, this is a pretty detailed picture that I chose. So you see a lot of peaks and valleys here. And there we go. we get the raster. And if I actually hide this level, you can see what it made. So showing this and looking at the result, you've got a lot of pyramids, right? Some really sharp spikes. But what's going to happen as you work this down with, say, a 1/4 inch ball mill to an 1/8 inch ball mill, etc., it's going to wash some of those peaks and valleys away, and give you basically a much smoother result than the initial STL would show. And then, of course, if you really do want that sharp detail, those really stark um, lines essentially at the edges of image transitions, you work this down with smaller and smaller ball tools, and that's where you get that really contrasting drop edge, if you will. Now, so that's basically a carving into a plate, and I can take and translate or move this object any way I want to, bury it in an actual, solid block, etc., to set up my actual sizes here. But I wanted to suggest maybe another method for this, which would be to do like a shadow box. So a shadow box would look something like this. So you would cut this out of a semi-transparent material, something like Korean tile, um, and put a light behind it, put it as the front of a box, and then that casts cast light through the thinner areas of the material to create the relief image actually. And with a soft white light that comes through some of these semi-transparent materials, it makes for a really nice effect, especially for like a memorial shadow box. Um, so to do that, what we have to do is basically invert what we did here, because if you made this as a shadow box, Odin's eyes are going to glow just like the god Odin, and then it's not going to look as pleasant. So you need to basically flip the peaks and valleys here of the image. Um, so the way I would do that is, again, probably in an external software is easiest. So I'd bring the image into something like, this is paint.net. And what I'm going to do here is I would do something like invert the colors. And then let's see, I'll make this black and white here. And then I'd save this as inverted colors. And here again, I'll fire up art just to bring in the initial image and generate that initial STL that I want to use. So this is going to flip those peaks and valleys so I can do something like that semi-transparent shadow box style. So the light comes through it in a proper way to recreate this image. So I hope this helped, and I'm sorry for your loss.